It's also something that Mr. Obama understands personally from very, very, very recent experience in a very different context.
For some reason, there's a green border around it that had to be photoshopped in. I'm trying to figure out why they would do that.
Well, this whole border is suspect. I mean, if you're taking a scan of something, it would, to your point, it would be white.
Hey, listen, it may or may not be, but certainly opens up the can of worms that there are at least questions for it.
Joining us now is P.J. Crowley. He is the former spokesman for the United States State Department. He served in that job until this past March when he resigned after having criticized the conditions of confinement of the WikiLeaks suspect, U.S. Army Private Bradley Manning. Mr. Crowley, it's really nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Rachel.
You are intimately familiar with all the players who have been involved in these decisions. What do you think the decision-making process was like on this issue of the bin Laden photos?
Well, inside the government, there's a concept of strategic communication. And we know that these photographs or videos, as you just detailed, have power. The question is, what are you communicating for what purpose? I'm not sure that the doubters out there, and there sure are some, are that large a group. But what I do know is that there are people who aspire to be martyrs out there. And in the concept of strategic communication, you don't want to give your opposition something for free. And the idea that releasing an iconic photo might be used as propaganda purposes, might validate that martyrdom psyche in some way, I think, tilted towards the decision the president made.
Even taking into account the fact that anybody who is a doubter is not necessarily going to be convinced by further evidence, the point I was trying to make with the birth certificate allegory there. Even taking that into account, what other good could it do to release the photo?
Well, of course, the president hasn't foreclosed that, for example, if Osama bin Laden's number two, Zarqawi, decides to use this and deny that bin Laden is dead, we always have the option of refuting him, for a larger purpose. But we've made an intelligent decision in avoiding the shrine of bin Laden. I think we are making an equally intelligent decision in releasing an iconic photo that can only be used by bin Laden's supporters to promote and extol martyrdom.
Part of the justification, I think, for, or at least what seemed to be part of the rationale for releasing the Zarqawi photo in Iraq, and again, very different circumstances, was not just to quell anybody who might doubt that he's dead, but to also sort of put a head on a pike, in a way, essentially to treat it as a trophy, to create either a threatening effect, some sort of deterrence effect about that, or just to lord it over anybody who might support him, that this can be done. It's a different form of exertion of power.
I think in that case, the United States had multiple audiences, convincing Saddam Hussein, who was still alive at the time, we've got your sons and we can come after you, or convincing the Iraqi people that the resistance that was occurring at that time is futile. So there was a different purpose to a different audience. I mean, ordinarily, one would say, philosophically, release everything you can unless there's a reason not to. In this case, because of the unique psyche of al-Qaeda and bin Laden, our strategic objective is to avoid having him deified in death any more than he was already a commanding figure in life. And I think that President made the right decision.
Secretary Clinton is one of the people who we've been told who argued against releasing a photo. Having worked so closely with her at the State Department, and again, what you know of this administration, what you describe as a sort of philosophical orientation toward disclosure, that you put information out when you have a choice to, unless there's a reason not to. I understand that as a philosophical point, but I wonder if that really is the inclination. If in matters of national security you feel like the bias really is toward more information and not towards less. It still feels like a pretty closed world of information for a journalist and for a bystander.
Well, many people have said, and rightfully so, that bin Laden was a figure, he was a terrorist, but he was also an idea. And we are in a battle of narratives here. One of the reasons why I've always been concerned about the concept of war on terror, for example, is it actually gives al-Qaeda something that they want. They feel themselves to be holy warriors. They want to be seen like that. And so we have to be intelligent about how we communicate in not so much those who are already committed to the al-Qaeda cause, but those who might be susceptible to that message. I think the other point is, for the most part, there hasn't been a real debate in the Middle East. I mean, it's remarkable that as we see this transformation, al-Qaeda has not been a major player. Bin Laden has not been a major figure. Most people in the Middle East, as I see it, have said, okay, fine, but we're focused on our situation in our country and our need for a government to do better, or our need to change the government that has been oppressing us for a while. So obviously he's been inserted into this transformative period, but there's no reason to make bin Laden a larger figure than he already is. I think in essence, since 2005, the popularity of al-Qaeda and the visibility of bin Laden have actually been in decline. And I think the president made the right decision.
Do you think, then, given that argument, do you think the president was right to make the sort of formal statement he made from the White House on Sunday night? Do you think he's right to go to ground zero tomorrow for essentially a press availability and to be seen bringing the news of bin Laden's death to the place where it will have the most resonance for Americans? Okay,
and there are twin audiences here. I think obviously Sunday night at the White House, he was telling the American people, he was also telling the world, this is what we've accomplished. Now I think it is trying to help the American people, particularly those here in New York, come to closure about a very searing event in our history.
P.J. Crowley, former State Department spokesman. I have been an ardent follower of yours on Twitter, and also somebody who I have been looking forward to talking to for a long time about these issues. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
It would be a pleasure.
Thank you very much. More ahead on how the bin Laden news affects the national debate about the Afghanistan war, about some of the political news that is getting buried, perhaps deliberately, in all of the wall-to-wall bin Laden coverage. Also, robotic exoskeletons. Because it's Wednesday, and there is vaguely a reason to talk about robotic exoskeletons.